had 8 picks in his last 5 games. Should the Browns just go with Manziel now? Skip Bayless.
Stephen A. Smith, I'm torn about this question. You know how big a fan I am of Johnny Manziel's. I was on the record before the season. If the Browns had started Manziel from the start, I said they would make the playoffs. And that was really against the grain at that point because we hadn't seen what Brian Hoyer continued to do with Cleveland, obviously. And Brian Hoyer has played great until the last 4 games when he's gone 1 touchdown pass to 6 interceptions. He did have the late save against Atlanta at Atlanta. It was sensational. And by his standards, Brian Hoyer, and I don't use this word very often on this show, has played great. How much more could you expect from a Brian Hoyer? So here we are now. Cleveland sits at 7-5. Johnny came in yesterday, obviously late in the game when all appeared to be lost. Was I surprised that it went boom, boom, boom? 8 plays, 80 yards, touchdown, the last on a great keep by Johnny, a scramble. Not surprised at all. The kid is electric. He was electric at A&M. He's the most exciting college football player I've ever seen, and I believe he can be a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback in the National Football League. But now I'm starting to doubt myself about, I'd love to see him play, but how fair is it to Johnny Manziel, who has started 0 games in the National Football League, to suddenly be thrown into a quasi-playoff chase with the Browns at 7-5, and what are they, a game and a half back, 2 back in the loss column, and all of a sudden you've got 2 playoff teams coming to town. You have Indy and Cincinnati back-to-back at home. Then you go to Carolina. Maybe you can win that game. Then you wind up in Baltimore. I'm not sure you can win that game, even though Baltimore obviously lost at home to a valiant effort from Philip Rivers, which we'll talk about later in the show. But how fair is it to Johnny Manziel to throw him into that fire with no starts? I don't know. Do I think he'd do pretty well? I do. Do I think he'd be great? I don't, because it's just too much to ask a kid quarterback with no experience. So I'm torn about it. I want to see him play. I think he will make electric plays. But the truth is, if I'm sitting in the Browns seats, the GM seat, the coach's seat, even the owner's seat, I would probably go back to Brian Hoyer just to finish it out. And I want to see Johnny start with a clean slate, either in Cleveland or elsewhere next year.
Skip Bayless' first take is no room for sentimentality, particularly on an issue like this. I could not disagree with you more. I think it makes no sense, the position that you're taking, simply because you have often called it the no-fun league. You also talked about it being business. You also talked about it being Peyton Manning, and it's a win-now league, or whatever the case may be. These are grown men. These are professionals. They're getting paid to do a job, and Brian Hoyer is not doing the job. Now, Skip Bayless, let me tell you why I emphatically disagree with you even more. Allow me to read from the Cleveland Plain deal, okay? Just a couple of tidbits of stats to just throw out at you right here. Actually, it was the last 3 games where Brian Hoyer has thrown 1 touchdown pass and just 6 interceptions, including 3 picks in Atlanta. Kerry pointed out at the beginning, he's thrown like 8 interceptions in the last 5 games. How about 5 interceptions in the last 2 games? Let's not stop there, Skip Bayless. The past 2 weeks alone, when we're talking about red zone activity, this man, Brian Hoyer, has been 1 for 9 in the red zone, including 1 for 6 against Atlanta last week, 0-3 against Buffalo yesterday. He now has 11 touchdowns, just 10 interceptions, and his quarterback rating has tumbled to 79.9. In the past 3 games, the rating has been 61.2, 52.3, and 51.0. This is anemic stuff that we are talking about here as it pertains to Brian Hoyer. I understand he won the job in training camp. I understand for the most part he's done a good job. I understand that fact against the Atlanta Falcons, he won that game with that late drive, driving them downfield to put them in position to win via a field goal. But at the same time, he has been incredibly and conspicuously unproductive. And that's the reality of this situation. You are in 2nd place of the AFC North. The division is there for you to be had because you beat Cincinnati earlier and you play them again coming up after you play Indianapolis. You have an opportunity to be relevant. You've got Josh Gordon back into the mix. And you're telling me you're worried about Johnny Manziel's feelings or whether it's fair to him to put him in this position or that position? Can he get the job done? That is the only question. This is not about sentimentality. This ain't Dr. Phil or Dear Abby or anything else. This is the National Football League, and you've got to be able to get the job done. Brian Hoyer has had every opportunity. I have supported him being the starting quarterback because I thought he did a better job in the preseason. I thought he showed leadership skills, and as a result, they were winning football games, so why bother this man? But now they're struggling. And on top of it all, he's struggling flagrantly. And then to top it off, in the aftermath of that anemic performance, he sat down in his locker and he was so down. He was so sad. Melancholy doesn't begin to describe the depth of his despair. So much so that the coaches and the players looked over at him and were worried about his ability to pick himself up and rise to that occasion. Meanwhile, you put Johnny Manziel into the game and he gives you a spark. I didn't think all of his throws were great. I thought at least one of them could have been intercepted, the one to Dre. But in the end, he had some big-time completions. He moved them down the field. He ran in for a touchdown. He gave them an instant spark. What is there to talk about? Put the man in the game and see what he's got, because you're seeing what Hoyer is giving you, and maybe Hoyer needs to get his behind benched and remember what that feels like so he can just go out there and play instead of worrying all the time, showing it on his sleeve, and being unproductive. I'm sorry, but I think Pettine's going to call Johnny Manziel's number. I think he absolutely should, and I think people like you need to go back to loving the opportunity that Johnny Manziel is going to get, as opposed to sitting there and lamenting the possibility that it's unfair to him because he's being thrown to the wolves. He's a big boy. He can handle it.
How sentimental was I early this year when I called the Cleveland Browns a bunch of fools for not starting Johnny Manziel from the start?
But I didn't call you sentimental then. I called you sentimental now.
Okay.
I didn't
How
call
fair
you
is it
then.
for the Browns to suddenly look around and say, hey, kid, save us now? We've dumped on you all year. We've criticized you all year. Now save us. Please save us. Will you please save us against the Indianapolis Colts and the Cincinnati Bengals? Are you kidding me?
Stay with me. When did they criticize him?
They've been on him all
When did they
year.
criticize him for football?
Well,
not
for everything.
football.
Well, they
were
criticized
worried
him
about
for
his
football
behavior.
in the preseason for sure.
No, in the preseason. Well, they said they analyzed and dissected him.
Yeah.
This is a different day.
Ridiculous.
We're in week 13. You're trying to make the playoffs. You're trying to tell me that they shouldn't give themselves possibly the best chance to make the playoffs because they're worried about his feelings? And to be fair to him, what's wrong with you?
Do you know what happens to rookie quarterbacks in this league, period? Do you watch what Bortles is going through? Do you watch what Bridgewater is going through? Do you look at their QBRs
I don't see
in these
Bortles
games?
complaining. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have a problem with Bridgewater and Bortles playing every week? You don't have a problem with them playing every week. They're going through their growing pains.
They get to figure out how to correct mistakes. Peyton Manning was a disaster his rookie year. He started the whole year. They were terrible, and he led the league in interceptions. So now you're going to throw Johnny Manziel in against two playoff-bound teams, Indy and Cincinnati. You're going to say, dance, kid, dance for us. Well, that's pretty tough duty, man.
You act like he's getting his body tied up, and he's got to stay there and take it no matter what. If he's not getting the job done, and he's in over his head, Skip, they can take him out. But when you're going for a playoff, you give yourself the best chance. And if they think he's going to give themselves, he's going to give them the best chance, why should they sit here talking about, we don't know how fair that's going to be?
I think you need,
put on your big boy pants.
You're the one who needs Dr. Phil to examine your head. I don't get your stance on this one.
Why?
It's not fair to him. What do you expect? Do you think Johnny can beat? Do you think he can beat these two teams next 2 weeks?
Johnny Manziel can do a better job than Brian Hoyer? Yes or no?
Do I believe it? I'm not so sure.
Yes.
I sat there. Where were we? At Michigan State.
I asked you, do you
on
believe?
Thursday night before we were at Michigan State. What happened? I watched Brian Hoyer light up Cincinnati in Cincinnati. Are you kidding me? I'm not so sure. I mean, Brian Hoyer started a bunch of games in this league. He had his time to learn under Tom Brady.
It's a different argument. It's a different argument. What I'm saying to you, Skip, if you believe that Brian Hoyer would do a better job than Johnny Manziel, I have nothing to say. But if your argument is simply that it's not fair to Johnny Manziel when we're trying to make a playoff, stop that.
Okay, you're always telling me.
Fair is a place where they judge pigs. It does not exist.
Boy,
okay, it's about getting it done.
That's an original line. I like it. You use it enough. But here's my point. What do you always say about Andrew Luck? Is he not the best young quarterback in the game? So you want Johnny Manziel's first start up against Andrew Luck? Really? I mean, God bless, kid. That's a lot to ask.
Johnny Manziel, if he's inserted into the starting lineup, is a byproduct of Brian Hoyer's ineptitude, his inept performance. It's not because they're trying to be unfair to Johnny Manziel. He's the backup. When you got a quarterback that's stinking up the joint, starting for you, you go to the backup. In any place else, this is par for the course. Why should there be an exception for Johnny Manziel? Every time it's somebody that you like, that you got an affection for, all of a sudden the issue of fairness comes into play. These are big boy rules. He's the backup. The quarterback is stinking up the joint.
Big boy
Get him
rules?
out, put Johnny Manziel in, and if Johnny Manziel doesn't get the job done, then send him back to the bench.
Okay,
There's no problem with that.
So it's okay with
There's no problem with that.
You're going to throw Johnny Manziel against two playoff teams to clean up Cleveland's mess. Is that okay with you?
I'm going to throw Johnny Manziel into the mix to possibly save my season because my starting quarterback has nosedived. He is stinking up the joint, so I'm going to go to my backup. He just happens to be Johnny Manziel. He just happens to be Johnny Football. That's the only.
Okay.
Nothing else matters. If this were anybody else, you'd be saying, well, a guy's stinking up the joint. You got to do what you got to do. But because you like Johnny Manziel, oh, it's not fair. Oh, please, stop it.
What would have been fair would have been to start him from the start. And we wouldn't be having this conversation because they would be playoff bound right now if Manziel had started all 12 games.
So because they didn't start Johnny Manziel in week 1, they shouldn't start him in week 13? That's what you're saying?
Well, at some point, you got to protect a kid's psyche who's never played before. What's he played now? Once a series and a half?
Skip Bayless are worried about Johnny Manziel's psyche? You are as mentally tough as that kid is and how he shrugs off all of you are worried about Johnny Manziel's psyche. You're going to sit here on national television and say that statement. You worried about Johnny Manziel's psyche?
I'd be worried about any rookie quarterback psyche getting thrown into that
stop
fire.
It. No, that's a lie. That's
okay, so here's what's set up.
Stop it.
So
stop it.
Johnny starts against Andrew Luck, and then I have to come in here a week from today and sit right here in this chair and hear this guy say, he stunk up the joint.
You don't want to
he
hear
had a QBR of 13. What are they doing with Johnny Manziel in there?
I'm not trying to hear that.
If he stinks up the joint, he goes back to the bench, and guess what? We come back next year, we do what we got to do. Right now, we got an opportunity to make the playoffs, and my quarterback is stinking up the joint. He's the backup. That's what you do with the backup. You elevate him to the position and you roll with it.
I think you need to
stop
back
it.
up.
Stephen A. says these are big boy rules. Put on your big boy pants. That's what they do in the league. We leave it there. When we come back, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers, and we're talking about Tom Brady again.